New Explorer Corps, First Arm, Spinward Operations Area, System, The Last Resort, Zenith Jump Point, Jump Ship, Rabbit's Foot, November 18th, 3152. The last few days had run into each other and become a blur in a high-stress routine. Noelle rubbed her eyes before leaning forward and resting her helmeted head against the ridge of the Korak C's cockpit control panel. Normally, Ravens would go out of their way to avoid showing any sign of fatigue, but in this isolated moment in an otherwise empty bay of the Rabbit's Foot, she took the opportunity to sigh and take a deep breath. After 7 days of near constant readiness, even clan warriors feel a strain. She took another long breath after the first, and then a third for good measure, before lifting her head and starting to go through the pre-flight checklist on her aerospace fighter. "Noelle, are you on the way?" Washi's voice came over the comlink, broke her from her daze. She clicked her tongue and opened the comlink to say, "I'm launching in 1 minute, just needed to double-check a few readings." After tugging on the restraints, Noelle took one more breath and pushed forward on the throttle, sending the aerospace fighter out into the void. Free from the confines of the flight bay, the young Raven pilot did feel slightly better. Flying a powerful ship at high speeds did have a tendency to wake you up. Banking around the Rabbit's Foot, the Kikumaru and Nara jump ships could be seen just a few kilometers away in close proximity. The smaller dots of light around them betrayed the circling dropships along with their aerospace fighter cover. Washi's ship glowed an intense, comforting blue on the HUD, and Noelle wondered if he was feeling as tired as she was. "I'm in position. You can head back in for a rest," she said into the comlink. Washi's response came a few moments later when he said, "I can stay a little longer. I'm not tired." "That cannot be the truth, Washi," Noelle said as she began another slow bank around the ship. Washi's Korak spiraled, spinning in a maneuver that was clearly intended to show off that he was awake and in good form, but Noelle only rolled her eyes. "Go grab some rest. You can show off later," Noelle replied. System, The Last Resort, 6 hours out from the Zenith jump point. Dropship, Alelia, November 18th, 3152. It was an all-hands-on-deck situation in the hold of the Eulalia as the team did what they could to fix up Max's Axeman. It was clear just at a glance that the mech was going to need an extensive overhaul and a well-equipped bay. Still, it was important to Olivia and the others that the newest teammate didn't suffer in silence. Plus, staying busy helped everyone keep their minds off the fact that they had not yet gotten completely out of the mess with the Last Resort. Gia was being kept in a locked storage room, emptied for use as a makeshift brig, and Vasil had posted himself at the door to make sure she didn't find a way to sneak off. She had tried to strike up conversations with anyone who came through the door, but Cal made it clear that no one was supposed to respond. By this point, her saccharine charms were infamous. With a large spanner in her hand, Olivia was tugging hard to try to peel back a piece of internal skeletal structure so that she could get to the internals of the Axeman's shoulder. Max was working on cutting away compromised armor with a torch, and Tenaka and Akif were busy cutting away melted circuitry from the torso. The left arm from the king crab lay on the steel plate at the mech's feet, but right now it was the least of their concerns. So far, Max had shown resilience, but every Mechwarrior on the ship understood just how impactful the loss of a mech can be. None more than Tenaka. She redoubled her effort, testing electrical lines and calling out to Akif to cut the ones which were no longer connected or fused into an unrecognizable mess. This was the unglamorous and disheartening reality of battlemech combat. No matter how much glory you gather on the field, most of the time you're faced with a long and expensive repair job when the adulation fades. The team's work was interrupted when Cal walked in with a stern look on his face. Stopping at the Axeman's foot, as the mech was still slumped against the external bay wall, he said, "We're within spitting distance of the Rabbit's Foot, and they still haven't seen any sign of the Last Resort's jump ship. If it arrives at all, it'll likely be in the next few hours. I appreciate that you want to work on Max's mech, but we need to get ready for a contested jump. That means getting the Thunderbolt and the Calliope hull and locked down. It won't be much, but it's better than throwing insults." Max flipped up the visor on his welding helmet and said, "No worries, Lieutenant. I don't think we can do much for this gal anyway." Olivia climbed down the makeshift gantry, and when she hit the deck, she asked, "What do we do if they lock us down again?" Cal ran his hand through his salt and pepper hair while saying, "I've talked to Captains Rin and Tanabe, and they say they've given instructions for arrival. They'll try to broadcast a warning that Gia is in our custody and that any attempt to lock down communications and sensors will be seen as further acts of war. We've also instructed the starport staff to broadcast the situation so that they'll get it from their side. However, there will be a delay for that message's arrival. If the Skyfire shows up guns blazing, we'll have to survive for up to 10 minutes before they even know what's going on. So it all depends on what their plan was before the jump, Tenica said with a frown. Cal nodded and replied, "Seems so. Wish I had a bright side for you, but hopefully the prospect of running into a swarm of Combine aerospace fighters will keep them from being too aggressive. I wouldn't want to go up against 18 of them, even in a Jolly Roger." 20 aerospace fighters, if the Ravens are out there, Tenica said before adding, "though I kind of hope they aren't." System, The Last Resort, Zenith Jump Point, Jump Ship Rabbit's Foot, November 18th, 3152, 3 hours away from rendezvous. Watching the Combine ships lock onto the Nara filled Rin with both hope and trepidation. While she was happy that they were able to make it back to the jump point, it was more than a little frustrating to hear that they had quickly abandoned the spaceport and left the Eulalia to face the Last Resort's forces on its own. She hadn't known what to say about it to Captain Tanabe, and thankfully the looming threat of the Skyfire's return to the system left precious little time in their short conversations to bring it up. "Captain, we've got a comm link with the Combine captains," Miri said from her bridge console. "Put it through," Rin responded, stepping from where she had been standing to the edge of the holotable. The digital representations of Captain Tanabe's face and one other person flickered to life in front of her. "Captain Rin, this is Captain Orin. He is the new commanding officer of the Nara," Tanabe said in her usual curt manner. Rin nodded and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you. It's fair to assume you've been briefed on the plan?" "Yes, Captain," Orin stated. Tanabe then said, "As soon as your dropships have attached, we will jump according to the agreed-upon coordinates toward the Combine. After the jump, we will send a ship to procure the prisoner your team took on the Last Resort 4. "That's acceptable," Rin said before adding, "Once we're out of the system, a discussion needs to be had concerning the consequences of the Combine dropships leaving the spaceport and abandoning the NEC. We barely escaped without taking casualties, and the repair bills for our battle mechs are going to be substantial." Tanabe took in the words without showing a reaction. A half-second after Rin stopped talking, Tanabe responded, "We were unable to obtain the technology promised that justified this entire venture. We will be returning as failures. I would recommend you keep that in mind when requesting additional compensation beyond your contracted agree." The representations of the two Combine captains flickered out of existence, followed shortly by everything else on the holotable. Miri quickly turned and yelped, "We have a jump signature. It's close to the Combine. Way too close. We've lost comms and sensors." "Damn," Rin said as she pounded her fist against the holotable's surface. System, The Last Resort, Zenith Jump Point, Jump Ship Kikumaru, November 18th, 3152. Captain Tanabe gripped the arms of the command chair, and her normally stoic face showed frustration and surprise. As prepared as they were for the arrival of the Skyfire, they didn't consider something as reckless as this. "How far apart are the ships?" she barked. A nervous-looking bridge officer stated, "Just a few hundred meters, but our sensors are now down." "This doesn't change the outcome," Tanabe said to herself as she looked down at the view screen showing the view from the starboard side of the Kikumaru. The hodgepodge armored surface of the Jolly Roger filled much of the screen, and flashes were indicators of incoming fire. "Brace for impact. Return fire immediately. No one challenges the dragon and lives," she stated with resolve. What started as a small distant rumbling through the deck plate turned into a violent shudder as the Kikumaru suffered the impact of a half-dozen anti-ship missiles and lancing laser fire from the Skyfire. The Combine jump ship returned fire, though the Invader-class ship lacked any heavy anti-ship weaponry. Their life or death would depend on the trio of Leopard CV dropships and their aerospace fighter escorts now descending upon the hulking jump ship from the Last Resort. "Set thrusters in a rotational turn. Make them chase us down for another broadside. It's a matter of outlasting them now," Tanabe said as she regained her composure after the tough impact. Circling the Rabbit's Foot a couple of kilometers away, Washi and Noel watched in awe as the two jump ships hammered at each other, creating an impressive, if horrifying, light show. Though both young pilots had read plenty of reports about large-scale space combat and had seen holovids from decades-old conflicts, seeing it happen in real time was sobering. "I'm glad I did not rest," Washi said as he slowed his arc around the Rabbit's Foot to take in the sight. The 3 Combine dropships were rapidly approaching the Jolly Roger and adding their fire to the swarming Shallones and Tasu Omnifighters. "We stay, right?" Noelle asked as she slowed her ship and joined Washi. "That was the plan, but if they lose, we will not be able to do anything to them, just the 2 of us," Washi stated. Noelle took a deep breath, knowing that Washi was feeling the same urge. One of the Leopard dropships exploded in a flash so bright that both the Ravens had to turn their gaze before the cockpit glass dimmed automatically. "Change of plans. We have to act now," Washi said as he pushed his throttle forward. "Af, on your 3, Noelle responded as she too accelerated toward the fray. System, The Last Resort, Zenith Jump Point, Jump Ship, Skyfire, November 18th, 3152. The swirling sensation in her stomach was never pleasant, but Guider Flores buried the sensation in the back of her mind as she gripped the railing behind the command chair of the bridge of the Skyfire. She croaked out, "We made it. We're right there. Lock them down." As the bridge crew recovered quickly, the activity ramped up. Some called out targets, others firing solutions, requesting target priority lists, and reporting locks from attacking spacecraft. Flores just smiled and focused her eyes on the broadside of the Kikumaru like a wolf finally chasing down its prey. "As soon as you have lock, fire! Break them! Your queen demands it!" Her shout filled the bridge and carried down the hallway beyond. Even as the ship began to shudder from incoming fire, Flores could taste victory. "Launch our fighters! Clear out the riffraff," she ordered as the first missiles streaked out toward their targets. Skyfire's aerospace contingent was scrapped together Frankenships, but they could still be something the Combine would have to deal with. A distraction could easily keep the jump ship alive long enough to disable the Kikumaru and the Nara. The billowing explosions on the side of the Kikumaru extended Flores' smile. The jump ship's armor buckled, rippled, and peeled back as compartments vented their contents into the void beyond. Flores knew that there was a hell of a way to go, but better them than her. "Transmit contact report to the Last Resort. Let them know we're currently engaged with the ships. Queen Gia should have things settled on the surface by now," Flores said to her communications officer. Tossed a bit by a series of LRMs that hit the thick plating around the bridge, Flores resolved to have a conversation about the balance of power once all this is over. With Gia's father and uncle gone, there would be plenty of wealth and influence to divvy up. As the ultimate victor over the bulk of the Combined forces at the jump point, the salvage would make the Last Resort's fleet far too substantial to be treated like underlings. When one of the Leopard CV dropships erupted in a blindingly beautiful light of a breached reactor core, Flores was sure her future was secured. End Part 13. As always, I hope you enjoyed this week's installment as things get spicy at the jump point. If you hit all the buttons to let YouTube know that it's worth sharing with others, I would appreciate it. Taking the extra step, if you're able, to become a channel member directly and substantially supports the creation of this and future content, which may not bring in a ton of clicks, but it does provide some worthwhile BattleTech content. I think it's important for channels like mine to be value added, meaning they should do more than just mine source books for lore videos. You can help me prove this thesis by joining us and being part of that channel's growth. Until we meet again, take care and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.